Hello, and welcome to the Muses Lab, your destination for all things pleasure as it relates to our human experience, relationships, spirituality, and sexuality. I invite you to join me on this adventure of discovery and hope what you receive inspires you to become the muse of your life's journey. So without further ado, let's explore. Hello, and welcome to the Muses Lab podcast. Mercury's still in retrograde, y'all. I am your host, Siobhan L., and I have a lovely guest with me today. I'm super excited. First of all, I love having guests on the podcast because that means y'all don't get to listen to me talk for like 45 minutes. Y'all can listen to other people talk for 45 minutes, and it's great to hear voices beside my own because there's so many people that I've connected with. There's so many people that I know who do amazing things, and I have an amazing woman here, Sheanah Rivers.
Hello.
Hello. Reiki teacher, holistic healer, massage therapist, and shroom connoisseur.
Several other titles, but we can start there.
Yes. Yes, be multi-hyphenated.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here. And this is a great conversation because it is Earth Month. And most people who are celebrating Earth Month are talking about reducing our carbon footprint and urban cities and the environment, which are indicative to Earth, right? But today we are going to talk about Earth as medicine and how that is impactful to people, particularly those within the African diaspora and other folks of color, and being able to utilize plant medicine as a tool and a modality. And I'm gonna let you rock.
Where do we begin? Okay, so I always had a fascination with plant medicine for some reason, like outside of the norm. I would smoke with my homeboys when I first started smoking cannabis, and I was like, why does that one make me giggle and that one makes me tired? And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean? Like, is this not an observation you made? And they were like, no, like it's weed. Weed is weed. And I was like, no. There's something different. I want more of the one that made me laugh. Yes. And they were like, oh. So they started asking and requesting different strains after that. And I was like, okay. I started educating myself on that. And then that's when I thought it was like sativa or indica, but it's more than that. It's terpenes. It's a whole nother, several layers.
Yes.
And then I was like, okay. And I'd always wanted, it's still on my to-do list, to do an ayahuasca journey. But there's places in the States that do them. And I'm like, no. Like, I want to go to like Peru.
Yes.
For that kind of experience. Like, I want I want to be there for it.
Yes.
But then I attempted to try shrooms with some friends years and years ago. We didn't have a scale to know what to measure, what microdosing was, what dosing anything was to know what effects we would experience. So we ordered like a pizza and put some shrooms on a pizza. And it was probably a microdose, like in hindsight. It absolutely was a microdose, but I was like, okay, like I'm still open to it. And then 2020, I did a journey with friends, and we set intentions. We had the right set and setting, and our intention was to open our hearts. And this was, like pandemic had just started a few months prior. And it was an amazing experience. And ever since then, like I've shared with so many people how much it could help them with so many things. And so I talk about Reiki all the time, and I also talk about shrooms all the time.
I love that. First of all, this resonates with me because we have similar parallels to how we got introduced into weed and shrooms, because I learned the same thing. I was like, I don't know, this one makes me a little tired, but this one makes me giggle. And for some reason, I feel a little more energized. And then I recognize the difference between sativa and indica. But then also for me, I learned this during the pandemic. Seasonally, the strains affect me different. So
Mm,
in the spring, summer, I have to use indica because sativa throws me off. Like I'm wired with sativa during the
interesting.
spring, summer, but during the fall, winter, I need sativa because the indica brings me so low as far as
Gotcha.
like my energy. And I'm maybe because I'm one of the saddy girls with the seasonal affective depression, and the sativa helps me during that time, and then the indica because spring is here and the sun is out, and it's a warmer climate. The indica keeps me mellow. So I learned about that. But to your point, terpenes and all those different things are a little bit more nuanced when we start talking about canna, right? But I also
Terpenes,
have
not turpentine. I think
oh
turpentine
terpene.
something. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
think turpentine is like road stuff or something, right?
That listen, this
Yeah,
ADHD brain be doing a lot. This ADHD brain does a whole lot. So
relatable. Yeah.
terpenes for the folks listening in, terpenes. Yeah. So I had my first, similar to you, I had my first shroom trip um during the pandemic. And I actually did not get an opportunity to do it with friends with how I was supposed to. What would have been my first shroom trip would have been during a retreat I was at in Martha's Vineyard,
Mm.
and I ended up being the shroom mommy because somebody had to keep us safe. So because I was the elder of the group, which I typically am the elder of the group, I ended up being the shroom mommy. But I saved mine. We had truffles, so I saved mine. And your light don't like you.
It apparently, I guess I'm giving off enough as is, so it's like you
Yes,
don't need me.
radiance. But we had a truffle. We had truffles, and I had a half truffle first to see how my body would react to it. And the half a truffle, probably a microdose again, felt like a
Hmm.
weed high. So I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And I waited an hour, and then after the hour, I took the other one, and it literally felt like life was in Technicolor.
Mm.
I will never forget my first room experience. I actually sent people voice notes because I knew I wasn't going to remember every single thing. So I started sending people voice notes on what I was feeling in the experience, and the comedy that people experience from these voice notes that I sent. It's like priceless. I wasn't able to save all of them, but I was able to save one, and my gosh, what I was experiencing, it was life changing. Like, if you, particularly for people who have want to do some inner child healing,
Yes.
shrooms is perfect for inner child healing. Oh my God.
I feel, and I've told people this before, I feel like they get us back in the like curiosity and wonder
Hmm. Hmm.
that we lose as adults.
Yeah.
But shrooms are like, hey, no, like, remember when you liked doing this and this was fun? And like,
Hmm.
look at this magical flower. And you're like, oh
Yes.
my gosh, I've never seen all of these colors in a flower. Have they always been these colors? And like,
Yes.
why didn't I notice this leaf looking so beautiful? And it just really, it like really makes you appreciate just the small, minute, amazing miracles of the world.
It really is wonderful. It is. I had my face planted into the window. I used to live in an attic apartment, and I had my face planted into the window, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this looks like cured, you know how you have one of those cured type of things, and it has like the plants and the flowers. There's another word for it, but it's like cured, and it's like
Mhm.
a clear thing. That's what it looked like with my face physically planted into the window. It looked like that, and I was like, wow, the way the leaves are, and they're just so defined. And man, the horizon, I can see the birds, I can see the sun, I can see where the clouds and the sun meet and connect. It was so many things that I was able to capture in that moment. And it was just so, I was in tears. I
Mhm.
cried 90% of my shroom trip.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
cried. I cried. And then I had the best masturbation session ever.
I mean, those go
It's,
hand in hand. They're
it
like
really does.
the energy centers work together or
It
against
was,
each other, depending on where you are.
because shrooms are an amplifier. They really are.
Hmm.
Shrooms are an amplifier. Oh my gosh, I love that. So when you are having conversations with persons about shrooms, how do you, or what are some ways that you've tried to get past the stigmatization? Because when we talk about psilocybin, everybody's like, oh my God, you're on drugs and blah, blah, blah. So what are some ways that you kind of navigate the stigmatization?
Well, firstly, I often like point out, to be careful with that word drugs because
Mm-hmm.
there are plenty of drugs that are FDA approved and
Mm-hmm.
prescribed, and
Mm-hmm.
they aren't doing what needs to be done to help us heal from what we're going through. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times they numb or pacify what's going on. And, that's cool temporarily. But like if you
Yeah.
actually want to move on with your life and like
Mm-hmm.
integrate the traumas or the experiences that weren't so joyful, they're
Mm-hmm.
still going to be a part of you. And I feel like shrooms are kind of like a little pat on the back, like they're there. It's okay. Um, but yeah, like just because and I had I had an episode where I told a client I needed to be careful saying it this way,
Mm.
but I remember seeing on a shirt it said "say perhaps to drugs," and I was like,
Hmm.
yeah, because we grew up with the Dare program, right?
Yes, correct. Correct.
And how'd that turn out?
Mm.
So, and again, just because it's a drug, a lot of the prescribed ones aren't what we need. So some are,
It,
but
mm,
some are not. And so I just say, look at the benefits, like actually watch some videos, read some
mm,
studies and data, and actually see the benefits people are having from them, especially veterans. They're helping their
mm.
PTSD, it's helping
I love
people's
that.
anxiety and depression. And I had a client who said she's been on 5 different antidepressants,
Oh
5,
wow.
and none of them did for her what psilocybin did.
Gotta be a silly bae. I'm gonna start. Be a silly bae. In particular, so I talk about my ADHD journey often, and I'm very transparent about that because I found out during the pandemic that I probably should get diagnosed for ADHD because the symptoms were just too they were too prominent at that point. And it was actually a TikTok. There was a lady that did a TikTok destigmatizing ADHD, and she was like, people think ADHD is, look at the squirrel and you just lose attention. But she was like, ADHD really looks like I start my day, I go make my coffee, then I realize I gotta pee, and then I go pee, and then I start my shower, but then I realize my coffee is on, so then I go get my coffee, and then I notice there's dishes in the sink, so then I start washing the dishes, and then I still haven't made my coffee, and then oh my god, the shower is running. So like that's actually what ADHD looks like. And I was like, oh my God, that's my life. I thought it was me. Like I thought I was an isolated incident. I didn't realize there were other people who were experiencing similar things. So when I finally got diagnosed last year, I was on I wasn't on meds yet because blood pressure and all the other ailments that I have going on in this body of mine, I wasn't approved for medication yet. So I was on weed for a minute. I was on weed for a minute, and then someone had recommended psilocybin, like the liquid form, the glycerin form. And I was like, oh. And I found someone pretty local here in Jersey that makes a mushroom glycerin, and the effects were phenomenal. And that was what I was able to do to kind of mitigate for me um while I was waiting to get approved for medication. So I recommend to people microdosing psilocybin shrooms. I recommend microdosing shrooms if you are unable to get medication, if you're unable to get a diagnosis, if you don't have the funds to get medication, because ADHD medication is not cheap. So, for accessibility purposes, you getting some shrooms might be a little bit more accessible than getting ADHD medication. So, particularly for people who have like some mental health challenges, shrooms is excellent for helping with that. To your point about your client with the depression, like, yeah.
And I will point out that it is not great for those with a history of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. So,
Mhm.
like, take that with a grain of salt. It's one of those. I like to ask everybody, like, what's your medicine? Like, what do you
Mhm.
have for your toolkit that helps you feel better? So,
Mhm.
psilocybin might not be it for some people,
Mhm.
but some people don't even know that it's an option. So, I like to just let them know these are the benefits of this, these are the benefits from this.
Mhm.
Take all of those things into consideration when addressing your mental, physical, spiritual health.
I think that's important because when you and I were having conversation about what we were going to discuss, you did point out that there's not a lot of training um, when it comes to people who can facilitate shrooms or just access to gaining the information and the knowledge about shrooms. So, how has it been your journey being a holistic practitioner and then adding shrooms to one of your tools or modality?
Well, there's the legality portion of it in the state of South Carolina, so it's not very much approved statewide. But there's a lot of people that I know benefit from it. There's a lot of people that are curious about it, but that is a like a big pause for them.
Mm-hmm.
But again, very much like FDA approval things, just because there's legality things around it does not mean it's bad for you, or because alcohol is legal for a certain age. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole nother podcast. But so I really just tell people to educate themselves on it. A lot of the things that we fear are just because we don't have enough knowledge about them. So
Mm-hmm.
study, read, like ask people about their experiences, because there's people out here sharing their experiences and how much it's transformed their lives.
I love that. We talked about shrooms as a modality. So we mentioned a few things. What are some additional things as far as utilizing shrooms as a modality that anyone who's listening can kind of tap into if they want to begin to explore?
I definitely suggest people can microdose. They can start a microdosing journey, and that looks different for everybody. And there's also something called mushroom stacking, where they
Mm-hmm.
incorporate other additional mushrooms. There's Paul Stammet. He's a big mushroom connoisseur, educator, ally. Um, and he even has something called the Stammet Stack. And it's, I think, 7 different kinds of mushrooms, because they all have additional benefits. So, like reishi, lion's mane, cordyceps, there's different adaptogen mushrooms that are good for brain cognition, mental clarity, heart health. The list goes on. So, not just psilocybin, but like add some other mushrooms to your regimen and like see what happens there. Because even lion's mane is good at uh, nerve regeneration.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you've had trauma, you have experiences with your nerve damage, right? And
Mm-hmm.
lion's mane can help rebuild that. And if you add that with psilocybin, because both of them help generate new cellular growth. So
Mm-hmm.
you blend those together and you get a chance to expand even more.
You just blew my mind because we mushroom coffee is the thing. Like, people are getting into mushroom coffee, they're using mushroom powder, but it's not psilocybin, it's the lion's mane, the reishi, the cordyceps. So it's the mushrooms that you can buy in the store. So it's those type of mushrooms, but not even thinking that to your point, doing like a mushroom stack. So if you're doing your research on different mushrooms, right? Because some people are already doing their research on how to better incorporate mushrooms into their regimen, their wellness regimen, right? So if you're already on the path to incorporate mushrooms into your wellness regimen, doing a little more research with psilocybin and seeing what effects are there and how to pair them with other different type of mushrooms that you can typically buy in the store. I think that then becomes kind of like a wellness cocktail for yourself. Like to your point, the lion's mane with the psilocybin. So what does that do for you if you have a specific ailment that you want to achieve or you want to work through? Like, what does that then achieve for you once you put lion's mane and the psilocybin together?
Yeah, and I mean the list is endless. I mean there's some that are good for skin even. So
Mhm.
it really does depend on what you're hoping to achieve. I've even seen there's like a graph that has, like your symptoms or your diagnosis and the
Mhm.
recommended mushrooms for each of those. So again, if you're putting a cocktail together for yourself, a mushroom blend, maybe you make it in a smoothie or you can put
Mhm.
it in a capsule, however you choose, but
Mhm.
it depends on what you're treating, and I'm big on like, don't just think you only have this one option to address what you are working through or healing. Um, but definitely look into what mushrooms you could incorporate with your diet, with your supplements, all of that.
Mhm. I love that. I didn't, you know, at least for me, I speak for myself. Like I take the shrooms. I have a shroom powder that has like ashwagandha and maca to help with like uh feminine hormones and hormonal balance and things of that nature. But I didn't think that far to be like, oh, let me look at whatever symptoms I'm having, whatever ailments I'm experiencing, and do my research a little bit and see how I can blend some psilocybin, whether it's penis envy or golden teachers or what have you. Like, how do I never thought to? I'm thinking, and now I'm saying that out loud. I'm like, lion's mane and golden teacher. That might be a thing. That
Lion's
sounds
mane
like
and
a
what?
golden teachers. That sounds
Mm-hmm.
that sounds like a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That
it's
just
good. Yeah, there's a
came to
company
me.
that I've recommended people order from, and they have a lion's mane and psilocybin blend, and that one in
Hmm.
particular is to promote creativity.
I love that, and that sound like that might be golden teachers because
It
that
is, yeah.
definitely it
I mean,
is. Yeah,
it's that one, yeah.
golden
And it's
teachers
like
does.
it's a lower dose, like
Mm,
125 of each or
mm,
something like that. But the
wow.
combo, again, it's that mushroom stuff. Because it's just going to amplify. They call it the entourage effect. So just
Mm.
the mushrooms that you're using just help build the benefits of all of them, obviously.
Wow, I'm like so intrigued. Like this is amazing. I never heard anybody talk about mushroom stacking before. So thank you for introducing that to me. And then the entourage effect. Like this is so intriguing because now I'm just thinking about the possibilities. And particularly for people who are creative, a lot of folks do recommend psilocybin to unlock those creative areas that just may be hidden or compartmentalized to help amplify that area. So pairing a lion's mane with the golden teachers, like that sounds like top tier. We also talked about you mentioned utilizing shrooms as a way to help with communication.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I've been saying that I would love to work with more therapists, counselors,
Mm,
because I believe that the combination of psilocybin assisted therapy would be tremendously beneficial to the mental health community,
mhm,
because I feel like it helps you just communicate a lot more fluid,
mm,
and it helps you see things from a different perspective because again it's helping regenerate nerve growth, and it just helps you think outside the box in a different way, or it helps you have maybe a bird's eye view versus like I'm in this
mm,
looking at it this way now. It's like,
mm.
oh well, let me see it from this perspective, and have you thought about it like this? And I think that's important because, with conditioning, with our life experiences, we get caught in this is the way it is. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not, things,
Yeah.
there's, like you said, there's possibilities and there's ways that you haven't even thought of things. And there's conversations that haven't even been had,
Yeah.
to learn the other things that are available out here.
I love that. I'm thinking about people who may have challenges with compartmentalization, or people who have challenges finding the language to speak, being able to speak, even just in general, being able to speak up, have agency over yourself, autonomy, reclaiming your time. I'm thinking about what a microdosing regimen could do to help them start on the path to just being able to open up, or being able to be firm in themselves. Not to say that, oh, you take shrooms and now all of a sudden you gonna be able to stand on business. Like, I don't want to we collectively are not promoting that, but
Right. Well, that's why I'm big on setting an intention with that
yeah.
practice. So,
Mhm.
if your goal is to get better speaking up or get
Yeah.
better just using your voice, sometimes it's
Mhm.
just using your voice. It's not
Mm.
as advanced as speaking up. Sometimes it's like, do I even say what I need to say?
Yeah.
But setting that intention and gaining more awareness around that and actually saying, like, this is what I'm working on can help you do that. And I work a lot with, energy centers with Reiki healing too. So my knowledge was already there on how to address these energy centers with intention and
Mhm.
with, wearing colors and with addressing it with activities to process it. But that energy center, the throat chakra, is big for a lot of people. It's big, especially for a lot of women who have
Mm.
been, the ones doing all the things for everybody else. They
Yeah.
don't have their needs expressed enough.
Mm.
So that's a big one that I feel gets worked through as especially healers,
Yeah.
mothers, just caregivers
Mm.
in general.
Yeah.
But that's
I
also
love
our
that.
manifestation one, like speaking on what we
Mm.
want, speaking on what we want to call in. Like it's all that same center. So if you feel low or low energy in
Mm.
that space, then you're not calling in what you could be calling in.
Mm. I love that. I love that as a tool of actualization. As you were there were like several thoughts that ran past my head as you were talking, because I think when you said set an intention, and I believe that when people say, oh, do shrooms, not guiding people with a plan on how to interact with the plant becomes problematic, right? So as we were both talking about our shroom experience, we both set intentions on how we wanted to experience, because I absolutely believe shrooms are an amplifier, right? So just like if for the spiritual folks, if you use conditioning oils, all the oil does is amplify your Orvi or your Ashe, your Orvi is your head, your Ashe that you already have, right? So whatever power that you have in you, the conditioning oil is going to amplify that, right? I feel like shrooms are the same from the earth. It's going to amplify what you're already experiencing, because there's a bit of a not a hallucinogen, but there's a bit of like, you're not crossing timelines, but
I mean,
there's a
there's that
way.
too.
I mean, there is that too. There is that too. But you're experiencing a version of yourself that you probably keep compartmentalized, or a shadow element of yourself that isn't always in the forefront, right? So whatever you're experiencing subconsciously, it's going to amplify that, right? So not setting intention, you just walk into this subconscious space, or this conscious subconscious space, because you're kind of in the gap, right? So you just walk into this gap with no direction, and the intention is what gives you the direction of what you want to experience with utilizing the plant. And I'm going to tie this into things like spiritual tools and modalities. Like, people being, oh, tarot cards, and it's like, the cards are just the cards, right? We could play
Just
with
confirmation.
It's that we could play with cards all day. It's not about the cards. It's who's ever wielding the tool, right? So the shrooms are the shrooms. They have healing properties, right? But how you wield the tool and how you guide and direct the tool is what the outcome is going to bring. So I feel like that caveat of setting an intention is super important, because if you don't tell the tool how you want to interact with it, it's just going to take you wherever you want to go.
Or where you
And
don't want to go.
right. I was about to say, because sometimes that might be a deep, dark place.
Well, and I had a client before who she had experienced a lot of loss in the year prior. And, she was still going to work regularly because, that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
And so she was really, really nervous that her journey was going to be just full of tears, just like sad tears with all of the loss that she had had. And instead, her whole trip was like 5 hours of hysterical laughter. She had been repressing so much joy. She didn't feel like she had, probably the worth or the worthiness to express it with what had transpired over the last year, So it was stuck in her, and she hadn't expressed so much joy. That was the entire trip. Like her stomach was hurting, her abs, her cheeks, because all she did was laugh the entire day.
My mouth is gaped because, first of all, that is super exciting for her to finally experience that level of joy and tap into that type of laughter. Because just as women, period, regardless of race, as women, period, we suppress so much joy, we suppress so much pleasure. We feel like those things are removed from us and that we have to be superheroes and show up and do things and carry the load and wield whatever. We remove ourselves, we disconnect and detach ourselves from experiences, from feelings like joy. So for her to be able to experience that on the trip, like the anticipation of like, oh, I'm going to experience all of this grief, and I'm prepping myself to experience all this grief. She didn't even prepare herself for joy. She didn't even think that was accessible to her. And
Right.
it accessed the joy and brought it to her face so much that her body is tensed from experiencing hysterical laughter. Like, I love that for her. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that for her. And I do hope that from that trip it unlocked joy for her, and she's continuing to experience joy in her life, even in the smallest moments, because that we're so remiss from joy, that this world that we currently live in, it
You have
takes
to
it
make
from
time
us.
for it. You have to make
Yes.
time for it, and we get caught up in doing all the time. And,
Yes.
when you think about children, and I remember there's some quote, or like just the description of play is like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have like a timer on play, and you don't necessarily have to produce a finished product with play. Kids just play.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like, I'm going to color in this page and I'm going to finish it. No, they're just like, I'm going to color. I'm going to color, I'm going to doodle, I'm going to, maybe start building something over here, but they're not like, I need to build until completion. Like at some point we feel like we can't have fun unless it's, for money, or,
Mm-hmm.
to like create something that's going to produce monetary gain. Or like if we do play, we're like, well, I gotta have this wrapped up. And it's like, you can actually just play and step away from it, go back to it. That's an option too.
Wow. That just thank you for that. That gave me something. That gave me something, because I really am doing my best. No, I'm going to change that. I am working to reincorporate play back into my life, but at the same time I'm deconditioning myself from feeling like I need to incentivize myself, or that play can only be this amount of time, and then I got to go back to work. I got work to do because I got to get this
Mhm.
money, or I got to conjure money at some point, and the only way I can do that is if I'm constantly working. So I'm in the process of actively reincorporating play back into my life, and just thinking about it's okay if it's not complete. And I'm gonna tell you the reason why that part resonates with me, because I've always had challenges with completion, and I felt like I didn't know how to properly adult because I didn't know how to complete things, and that a lot of that is attributed to me having ADHD. Like, I start things and I don't finish, and that's just kind of been like my Achilles heel. So knowing that, maybe not necessarily in my work life, but in my playscape, that I can start things and I don't necessarily have to finish it right then and there. And I can go back and I can explore. It's very exploratory. I can explore here. I can try this. I can try that. And it's okay because my inner child is happy because it's going through this exploratory space and it's weaving in and out of all the different nuances and things that it wants to try or that she wants to try. And it's fine.
I mean, I started my mushroom ebook March of last year. Something I'm
Mm.
very passionate about, something I know a lot of information on. And it was like, I'm going to do this. And I had like almost all the pages done. And I was like, all I need to do is blah, blah, blah. And
Mm.
and it didn't happen. All I need to do is blah, blah, blah. It didn't happen. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe people aren't ready yet. Maybe it's still too soon. And then I was like, okay, maybe that's not the case. Maybe I wasn't ready with the responsibility that's going to come with this, but there is a need for it. I'm having fun doing it. Like, how can I make it more fun? So it's something I look forward to coming back to. But then also that borderline or that in between, like you said, you can make time for play outside of your work life.
Mm.
My career, my lane that I've been in, um, involves a blend of both. Like, my
Mhm.
work requires there to be some playfulness. My work
Mm.
requires there to be that creativity to speak to who I need
Yeah.
to speak to, and it's different mediums of what I'm speaking on.
Yeah.
There's courses, there's
Mhm.
podcasts, there's email, there's like different mediums, and you have to put a timeline on those things
Mhm.
because if you want some things to shake, there's
Yeah.
that, like, I get to be creative, but also I get to adult because I know the bigger picture.
Yeah. I love that. There's a parallel path here because there's a play element to what I do as well as a creative practitioner. So there's a play element to what I do, engaging with my community, talking about pleasure as my philosophy, as the center of how I express myself as a creative individual. And then there's the newsletters, the email marketing, the social media. Like, those are the things where there's still a play element, but I also have to adult because profit is a thing, right? And that isn't necessarily because I'm trying to be this conglomerate or giant. I'm just trying to sustain. Just trying to live. I'm just trying to live a pleasure filled life. So yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm a razzle dazzle what you just said, because you said I'm just trying to sustain, and I'm just trying. No, no, no. We want to do more than sustain,
You're right.
girl. We want to do
You're
more than
right.
I'm living joyfully and
You're right.
creatively as
You're right.
myself,
Yes. You're right.
because that's our birthright. And you mentioned something earlier too about, and I guess you've even had the aha of the the thought that we have to be working to receive money. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's moments that, like, I know last week I was not working, and I was like, huh, let me check my Patreon. Like, just something out of nowhere. Check your Patreon page. And I was like, oh my God, there's money in this account that I didn't even know was here. I didn't work for this today. And
Mm-hmm.
there's money that has been made available to me. And
Mm-hmm.
from seeds I had planted a year
Mm-hmm.
ago, or almost a year ago. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much that we can do without having to do.
Yes. Yes. Some folks will call it passive income, and I think I want to transition from that because there is such a thing as passive income, but that right there is just magnetization. I think that's just being
Yes,
an abundant magnet
yes,
for
yes.
you being able to receive the things that are just for you. Like it's for
Mhm.
you. The money is for you. Money is someone had sent me this TikTok where a lady was saying money is my best friend, and I was like, I need to get on that wave. Money is my best friend. We hang out. Money comes and visits me. It drops by. It
And
drops
he's
me
obsessed
gifts.
with me.
Money is obsessed with me. I was like, that's the wavelength I need to be on because then I'm not obsessing over my relationship with it. I'm now leaning into the relationship and I'm allowing it to come to me as opposed to me chasing it because money doesn't want to be chased. I learned that the hard way. Money does not want to be chased. Money wants to be revered. Money wants to be accepted. Money wants to be included. Money wants to be thought of. So that's the energy that I'm shifting to and adopting that. So I love that razzle dazzle. I love that.
Well, I had
Yeah.
a similar experience and I realized it was a belief that I got from my mom. And she's
Mm,
British, so moving over here, like, my parents were together, then he had left. So she was very much in survival mode. So
yeah.
her thought process for money is I just want to make enough to pay my bills. And so I adopted that. I just
Hmm.
I just want to sustain. I just want to make enough to pay my bills. And then I was like, but that's not true. I want to make more than enough. I want to make more than just enough to cover my bills. I want money to travel. I want money to do more things I want to do, like, and it's so trying to sustain that's not enough.
Yes. Yes. I'm glad you was like, that's a lie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm not living that lie. Here's
Mm-mm,
my truth.
mm-mm. Yes.
Yeah, and you know what? I love that. I want to say during my first shroom trip, I unlocked like, bitch, you that bitch. Like, hello,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
wake up.
Yes.
What's
Yep.
going on?
Yep.
Wake up to yourself.
Yep. Exactly
And
that.
embrace yourself. And I love that. And I feel like I've been unlocking, like slowly unlocking things because I feel like even if you don't go on another shroom trip, if you don't use shrooms ever again, that first experience is just going to open the door to unlock so many things for you. And once it's you can't unsee it. So once you go through that experience where you've awakened in some respects to your subconscious, or now your subconscious and your conscious are kind of like in a blend in some way, and you're awakened to all of those things, there's just certain things you can't unsee. And I can attest that since my first trip, I've gone on others since, but since my first trip, it really started, my self awareness shifted. I became more self aware and able to go through the process of deconditioning, decolonizing certain things, standing firm in my truth. So it increased the self awareness. So, to your point about working with therapists, I really do believe that would be helpful with persons who are in therapy working on the self actualization, or people who have challenges with money and trying to find a better relationship, a better working relationship with money, persons who are deconditioning themselves from upbringing and values that are not part of their truth, that are not who they are. Because our parents do what they can with what they know, right? Particularly if you have, because I'm I'm a product of a divorce home. So my mother was also in survival mode. And then I ended up being in survival mode, right? Because all you know is those values that you were brought up in, and you just learn how to survive, right? So even shifting out of survival mode into learning how to thrive, into learning how to live, into embracing things like luxury, a soft life, if that's what you want, an easeful life, if that's what you want, a pleasure filled life, if that's what you want, however you want your life to look like. I do feel like with guidance, utilizing shrooms with the proper guidance is a great way to unlock those levels of self-actualization. So yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always tell people too, because even though you mentioned like you were sending all your friends voice notes and stuff, I bet you
Hmm.
still remember so much detail from that
I do.
experience.
I
So
do.
much detail. And like, it didn't just happen yesterday, but it felt like it did, right?
Yes.
And it's one
Yes.
of those, like, think about what happens with alcohol. Like, there's been many times I don't remember anything. And
Yeah.
it's like, I have no idea what took place that night. And to
Mm-hmm.
be able to pinpoint this part of the night, I had this experience, then I saw this, then I felt
Mm-hmm.
this emotion, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like it just happened.
Yeah. I
So
went.
even, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say to your point in remembering what happened, one of the last like non-microdose. Well, no, that was a microdose because that was a capsule. So one of the last experiences that I had, I did a guided meditation. That's how he, because you have to, for legal reasons. You have to advertise it. As you gotta get creative with how you advertise it, right? So I went on a guided meditation and we did shrooms. And first of all, I don't know, I'm in Jersey and we were in South Mountain, which is like another large park in like the northeastern part of Jersey. I don't know how he found all these trails, but we walked through the park and it didn't even feel like it. We were in the park for 3 hours. It didn't even feel like it. We were in so many different trails. We came across water, rivers, all types of like inclines and stuff. Like it was wild. And that was so beautiful because I always recommend, if people do up their first experience, to do it in some type of nature, whether you're near water or you're in like a park or something, because the experience is like really amplifying. It's gratifying. It's really gratifying because you're experiencing life in such a vibrant way, and you just appreciate things a little differently, especially if it's like a quieter park and there's not a lot of people around. You're not absorbing other energy. You really get to hear yourself. It's a very clear audience space. Even if you're not a clear audience, it's a very clear audience space. You get to hear things and receive things. You really feel like the birds are talking to you. You feel like the trees are talking to you. You feel like you
Because
can
they are.
connect.
Because they
Yes,
are.
and you feel like you can connect. It's a amplified experience, and I still remember. And we were going over my birth chart. It was like a astrological reading because he's a astrologer. So we were doing. He was doing
Yeah,
a
these
reading
things
for
in my
me.
menu.
Yeah, he was doing a reading with me and we were talking about certain things and I had questions and I was like, wow, I didn't even think about it like that. Oh man, I'm solving problems. Like you could solve about 60% of your problems on shrooms. You really can. You could solve.
There's a
Go ahead.
meme around there that says, people who run the world haven't
Mm.
don't do shrooms, and people who have done shrooms know why that's a problem.
Oh, I like that because the facts, the accuracy.
Yes, and also the guy who is behind the um, Alcoholics Anonymous principles,
Mm-hmm.
he came up with those principles on a psilocybin journey. Yeah, so that's
Look
that.
at that. Solving problems
Mm-hmm.
on shrooms.
Mm-hmm. Because they're also good for addiction. So it
They
makes sense that,
are.
right? Yeah. So it makes sense that he had that aha to help give people some guidance on their addiction.
They are. I tell people, sometimes weed and shrooms go hand in hand, but that's only if you don't want to like fully like go deep into a trip. If you want to kind of modify yourself or moderate yourself a little bit, take a look. If you do a little puff and you do your shrooms, then cool. But also, you might ease back on the cannabis because you did the shrooms and the
Yep.
cannabis together. And people might feel like shrooms are addictive. They aren't, because I engage with shrooms when my body feels like I should do this now. It's a strong communication that you create with the plant where you honor it and you don't overuse it. There's no greed involved, which is why we're gonna get into your book, which is why microdosing is important because it helps you build a relationship with it. So your body can begin to communicate with you when like, oh, microdosing is cool, but maybe we need to take a break for now. Or like, we've taken a long break. I think we need to get back on our microdosing regimen. We starting to slip a little bit or get lost a little bit. Let's utilize the plant medicine to bring us back to center. So your book, which I'm really excited about.
Thank you. And mushrooms also, they don't allow that abuse. Like they just won't work. If you're like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to take them every day for 30 days, they're just not, you're not going to feel the
Mm-mm.
benefits. So it's like,
Nope.
oh, well, what's the point in doing that?
And there it is.
Yeah. So that it's, if only everything was set up that way for
Mm-hmm.
those, for those with addictive personalities or addictive
Mm-hmm.
behaviors. Let me not say personalities.
Mm.
Personalities feels very, but behaviors.
Mm. I like
Um,
that.
but yeah, no, my book, I knew, like I said, I knew there's a need for it.
Mm.
There's so much, we grew up on this is your brain on drugs. And when you talk to people about mushrooms, they immediately think, before you even talk about microdosing, they hear shrooms and they're like, walls are going to be melting. No, thank you. And it's like, that's not even,
That's an
we're not
acid
even there
trip.
yet. That too, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, see, that one I'm nervous about because
Never doing
I'm
acid.
nervous about
Never.
that one. But then I've seen that people are microdosing that. And I was like, see, I'd be open
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, that's true.
So again, now that I know what microdosing is,
Mm.
um, but yeah, it's one of those like I just wanted to be able to provide some information in like
Yeah.
one spot that isn't
Mm.
necessarily getting censored or
Mm.
flagged or just a place to guide people with questions because there are
Yeah.
questions and you can Google and you can watch videos and stuff, but it's
Mm.
also nice to have a nice hub for things to
Yeah.
explore and learn
I
some
like
more.
that. I like that. Would you consider it kind of like a microdosing 101?
It's not just microdosing. It's also on like the history of
Mm.
how psilocybin got here.
Mm.
Like it's, like the journey with how we got here and the future of it. So
Mm.
there's other elements and there's also information included with dosage, um, dosage and how to understand what effects you
Mm-hmm.
may have with the dosing. So there's again educational information because
Yeah.
the more education, the more harm reduction. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we just want more of that. We just want people to know that it is a
Yeah.
tool, that it is a resource that's out there. Just educate yourself on it and get familiar with it enough so you can make use of it as a tool for your toolkit.
I love that. Because now this is like a comprehensive guide to shrooms, and I
Yes,
think that's
yes,
important, particularly for the beginners or those who are interested or intrigued. Having a comprehensive guide, knowing the history, because of course, before you take something, you want to know the history of it, how it got here, who started it, what, like, even just tidbits that helps to kind of bring some groundingness and create some foundation. Because once you know the history of something, then you can decide how you want to interact with it based on the history, right? So I think that's important. Also dosage, because I think that throws people off as well, a dosing guide. And let's say you want to be the person that makes your own capsules, please use veggie capsules if you're going to do so.
yes, right.
Please use like vegan capsules, please.
Mm-hmm.
Use those because they break down properly in your body.
Mm-hmm.
um but if you are that person that wants to make your own capsules, that helps. If you're
Yep,
a person, if you're like a kitchen witch and you want to make your own tincture or your own glycerate
yep,
or something like that,
yep.
that's
Lemon
that's
tech.
that yes, that's perfect to
My first experience was chocolate. So,
same. My first experience was chocolate too, the little
well,
truffle that
after
I
the pizza.
had.
After the pizza
Well,
experience. It
after the
was my full one with my friends was we had chocolate, but it was all measured out. Like we knew how much
yeah.
chocolate we needed to have for the
Mm-hmm.
journey we wanted to have.
Yes, and that's wonderful. Particularly, if you're a person that does not want to engage in cannabis, if you don't want to engage in cannabis, but you are interested in shrooms and doing like shroom truffles or shroom bonbons and ways to make it more pleasing, because I've had shrooms without, just like straight
Same.
up. And, you know, it has a woody, earthy taste.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Mm-hmm.
nasty, but it does have an earthy taste. But I know I understand taste and texture are things for a lot of people, particularly if you're a heavy sensory person. So introducing it with like a chocolate or some type of confection
Or
that might,
smoothie.
or a smoothie, right? A smoothie,
The
so you
right
don't
kind of
taste it at
smoothie, though.
all.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that makes
So
a
you don't
difference.
taste it. It does. It does. But like, so you don't taste it at all, right? You know, it's already embedded into whatever it is you're going to ingest, so it gets into your bloodstream a little quicker, right? So I think those having those options is helpful, and having that dosing guide is going to be helpful for those who want to get a little creative with how they begin their shroom journey. This was great. But before your book comes out, Earth Day?
Earth Day. Earth Day. Yep.
How can they get it? How can they get it?
It'll be in my link in my bio. And then also just if you're on my email list, I have, like a free meditation if you join my email list. But once you're on my email list, you'll have updates anyway. So might put it on my Patreon. I think that's the route I'm gonna take for it.
Okay.
So yeah, but I'll have things. Make sure you have it.
Perfect. Perfect. And no worries, people. I will have all that information in the show notes so you can look and you can join Sheanah's Instagram page and her Patreon, and I'll have all that there and how to join her mailing list. Please do that. Sign up to her mailing list. Support, support, support. There are not a lot of women, Black women in particular, I see vocally talking about shrooms as a healing tool, as a healing modality. And we want to support and bring more community and more education, more awareness to how our, like you said, our options. Because
Yes.
sometimes we do feel like we only got one route, and you like, nah, there's multiple routes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's important.
Yep.
I love it. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
for sharing, because there's nuggets here. There are nuggets here. This was very informative for me. This was also healing for me in so many ways. Things that I'm working through, perspective, and I appreciate perspective on certain things because I do not claim to know everything.
Same, but I know a lot of people who know a lot of things. So
Yes, correct. Correct. And I'm glad you are now one of the people who I know who knows a lot of things.
yes,
So I'm appreciative of you taking the time and to share your work with the Muses Lab community. Yeah.
thank you again for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you to all of you for tuning into the Muses Lab podcast. And until next time. Thank you for tapping into the Muses Lab. I hope you enjoyed this week's adventure. Be sure to like this episode, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and share the wealth with others. Dive deeper into the lab by joining the Pleasure Frequency list at www.themuseslab.com. Receive weekly musings, early access, and exclusive drops, as well as discounts on products and services. Thank you once again for tapping in. Until next time.